Hey, what's going on, guys? So, I'm here to do another book review by the author Mary Monroe, and this standalone book is called The Gift of Family. And I really enjoyed this book. It deals with a couple named Eugene and Rosemary. They're middle aged. She's 45, and I believe he's like 49, turning 50. So, they're kind of like getting up there in age, and it also surrounds a lady named Ethel and her great grandchildren by the names of Eddie, Anthony, and Cynthia. So yeah, so to give a little background surrounding Eugene and Rosemary, well, they've been married a long time, for many years now. And like I said, they're in their mid to late 40s. And of course, with being married, um, you want to have children and things like that, but I'll get to that in a second. Now, what they do as far as their professions, now Eugene, he is a celebrity entertainment lawyer. So that's what he does. So he has a lot of celebrity clients that he has to attend to. And so that's what he does. And then his wife, Rosemary, she owns a very elegant, very nice luxury nail bar downtown in California. This is all based in California, if I didn't mention that. So they're doing very well in life, you know. She has lots of all types of different type of clients that come into her nail shop, from celebrities to just normal day-to-day people, business people, just all types of people come into her shop. So they both are doing very well in their life, and all of such. But you know, they both desire kids. Okay, so they've been trying to have kids all of their marriage, and to no avail. She has miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage, until you know they get so discouraged by that they don't want to try, just to only be let down, that they decided to go the adoption route, which they do. They adopt and adopt and adopt and adopt. They've adopted so many times. And I was just kind of shocked and surprised at the tenacity that they had when they were adopting these children. They tried all different ages. It just didn't work out. Like when the children would become of age, they would always want to know or find out who their, birth parents were. And that's what they would do. And then when they would find out who their birth parents were, they would just leave them and not have any communication with them. They wanted to cut all ties with them. And that was a bit heartbreaking, because Eugene and his wife, they're so nice. They're just good people. They do right by people. They're very humble, given with them being around celebrities and having a beautiful home in California. They're doing well off in life. You would think that they wouldn't be as humble as they are, but they're very humble, good people, very loving people, very caring people, very genuine people, that you just don't run across too often. So they're like diamonds in the rough, and I just couldn't figure out why these children that they would adopt they didn't feel very settled with them. But God always has a plan. So yeah, they spend most of their life, just adopting and trying to, have this family. And even though she had all these miscarriages, she still didn't lose faith of trying to have some of her own. They never stopped trying, you know and like I said, they have a beautiful, gorgeous mansion. Their house is so lovely. They have a beautiful pool in the backyard. They're just doing well in life, but it's like always something missing, and kids were it for them. So I believe that she went to her this annual doctor visit, you get your labs done And then you go get your pap smear and everything like that. She thought it was just going to be a regular visit, but it just so happened immediately, like when she left the office, I believe it was like maybe 30 minutes to an hour later, the office called her and it was like, she was shocked. She was thinking that maybe they was going to tell her, I don't know, maybe that she was pregnant because like I told you, after all, they were still trying. So she was thinking that it was something like that because the doctor was being very he wanted her to come back to the office because he said it was rather important and he couldn't really tell her over the phone what he wanted to talk to her about, that she would have to come back to the office so that he can talk to her and that she needs to come as soon as possible. So she's not thinking, she was a little scared, but then her wheels started turning and was like, okay, for him to want me to come into the office, it must be good news that I'm pregnant because she's always had good reports every time that she would go get her pap smear or go to the doctor, it was always good. So she was a little scared and she knew that it was very serious for the doctor to want to talk to you in person instead of telling you over the phone. And so, of course, her coworker named or two of her employees, well, they're really good friends as well to her. I know they work for her, but they became very close and they're kind of like family. That's how close they are. But she had called Ming Ji, who is a manicurist or however you say it. She does manicures. They all do nails. Obviously, it's a nail shop. And so she called Ming Ji and then she called Janelle, who is another, worker of hers, and she let them know that because she was on her way back to work, but she let them know that she had to swing by and take care of something else and that she would come in later. And so she turns around and she goes back to the doctor office, and so she was like, okay, yeah, you told me to come back, like what's going on that you couldn't tell me over the phone? And so he was, a little worried. And she was like, is it really serious? Do I have cancer? And he was like, no, you don't have cancer, at least not yet. But we saw something that looked abnormal on your pap smear. And before it turns to cancer, you're going to need to have surgery, have an operation. Matter of fact, you're going to need a hysterectomy. And we need to do this as quickly as possible because, I just don't want, we're just concerned about the abnormal cell changes that we saw, and we just want to go ahead and take care of it with you being 45 and different things like that. And if you've had, this in your family before, I guess her mother or grandmother, they've had issues with that before. And so he was really encouraging her to go ahead and have a hysterectomy, which this is devastating news for Rosemary because they were still trying to have kids, and getting a hysterectomy, that just deads that situation. There's no hope of her ever being able to conceive, to have children ever again. So that's out the window. So she's devastated that the doctor is telling her this. And then she's also glad that, this is not terminal and something permanent, that it'll be a long battle of trying to recover her health. She's glad that, you could take preventative measures to take care of this, but it's just a catch-22. And then this is around the holidays a little bit, and it's a lot going on. She's got her salon, so she don't really want to take time off, and she really don't want to tell her husband Eugene all this mess. And so the doctor said, it's pretty cool. It's not even anything cancerous. We just want to take necessary means to remove it before it turns to that point. And you really don't have a month to wait or 2 months to wait, because she wanted to wait till after the holidays, but he was really recommending that she doesn't wait after the holidays and to take care of it immediately. He said, I can get you in next week or maybe 2 weeks from now. And she was like, oh wow, that's a lot sooner than what I thought. But she had no choice, and she said, well, okay, I'll go ahead and schedule. Well, I have to talk this over with my husband. And so the doctor was like, okay, just take your time, but I can get you in, like I said, 2 weeks from now. So that'll give you some time to find out who's going to be taking care of you, because of course, after surgery, is you're gonna those first 2 weeks you're gonna need help around the clock. You're gonna need help bathing. You can't do any exercises, do the things that you normally would do or have been doing. That's going to be cut back, so you're going to need someone who can be there for you around the clock. So this gives you enough time to do that. And so she was like, okay, well, thank you, I'll just talk this over with my husband and whatnot and get back with you. So she didn't want to tell her husband because they really, really wanted to have children. So she was very hesitant after the doctor visit. And of course, Eugene, her husband, did call, and he was calling. And of course, she called him back, and she was just telling him that she was a bit busy doing something else. She wanted to wait till she got home to tell him what she was really doing, but he was calling because he was concerned about her, because he hadn't heard from her when he was trying to reach her. And she was like, yeah, just I was busy doing something, but I'll see you later when we get home. And he was like, well, I was calling to remind you that we had a dinner party to go to with one of the clients that he was working with, some famous rapper and his wife. They were to attend some type of get together dinner party or whatever, and she really wasn't in the mood at this point to go, but she didn't want to tell him that over the phone. And she was just basically letting him know that we'll discuss it later. And so she wasn't really in the mood to go back to work. So she called Ming Lee and Janelle and let them know that she will not be returning for the rest of the day, and for them to go ahead and close up shop and take care of everything, that she was going to be out for the rest of the day, that she was really tired and wasn't feeling well. And so they said, okay, no problem. Take care of what you need to take care of, and I hope you feel better. So she goes home, and she's just going through the emotions of like coming to grips and terms with, like, I'm about to have a hysterectomy. I've never had a major surgery, and it's not just a major surgery. Like, my hopes and dreams of carrying a child and conceiving are over. So she's kind of devastated, honestly, but she's glad that she's able to do something about whatever they saw going on with her uterus or whatnot, which explains all the miscarriages that she's had over the course of their marriage. I believe they've been married, 15, 20 years. But yeah, that explains that. So now she's coming to terms with everything and saying, well, that makes sense as to why I could never conceive. It's just obviously it's not in God's will. So she's a little down about that, and just kind of like in the funk. So anyways, her husband comes home, and I thought that she wasn't gonna tell him, but she does. When he gets home, she doesn't immediately say that off the bat, but you know, was talking to him about his day and how he's doing or whatnot. And then she laid the news on him, and he was devastated, but he was more concerned about her health. And so he was glad that she was able to do something about it. And he was telling her, I'll just go ahead and take off from work and just shut a lot of stuff down. But she knows that he's a very busy guy, and he just can't really take off, even though he wanted to take off and he could take off. It just wasn't going to be good for his business. So she was like, no, you're not going to take off. I can't let you do that. And we'll look into having someone like an in-house nurse or something like that. And he was like, well, okay, if you want to go that route, I have some people and connections I can call and set up some appointments so that they can come by and you can interview them, see how you like them or whatnot. So she was like, okay, so cool or whatnot. And of course, when she went home and she told Janelle and Ming Lee that she was going home. When she went home, like I said, she was in this funk, and then she went into this deep sleep because she had a horrible headache. She was just stressed at this point. And so while she was sleeping, Janelle and Ming Lee were texting and calling her, trying to check on her because they knew that she wasn't feeling well. And so when she saw the missed calls and the text, she just texted them and told them, I'm sorry I missed you guys' call or whatever. I was just really tired or whatnot and whatever. And she told them, don't worry. But she knew eventually she was going to have to tell them her situation, which she wasn't ready to tell them that day until she secured someone to come in and take care of her. Once she had that taken care of, then she would have to explain to them why she was going to be out for a while, because she was going to need to be out for 6 to 8 weeks. So, yeah. So, of course, her husband, Eugene, makes the phone calls and set up some meetings for his wife, so she can interview these people to see who's going to be a good fit to take care of her while she's recovering from her hysterectomy. And so the people, she set up, I think, like maybe 4 interviews. And she was meeting each one, and it just was not working out. Like, the first one was highly unprofessional and didn't want to do some of the things that was going to need to be done. Like, they were going to need to make food and of course clean up, bathe her. When she said bathe her, they were acting like, well, that shouldn't be in the description, but okay. It was just very unprofessional. So the first one, that's a no-go. She was not going to trust somebody like that. So that was out. And then the second person was late, and they just were kind of rude and ghetto and obnoxious. And so she was like, that's a no go. And it's just repeatedly, these people were just unfit. And so at this point, of course, her husband wanted to know, after all of the interviewing that she did most of the day, when he got home, he was like, well, how did everything go? And she was like, it did not go well at all. Like, I'm really getting discouraged about this whole thing. This is not looking too good. I don't know what I'm going to do, because a week had passed, and literally she only had a week left to find someone, because they had already decided that she was going to go ahead and go with the surgery. So they scheduled the surgery. And so it was getting down to the time where they really needed to find someone that they can trust. And so I believe Eugene mentioned something about he was going to try to find this childhood woman who worked for his family, because his dad was a entertainment lawyer as well. So he kind of like followed in the footsteps of his father. And so this lady named Ethel Perkins, I believe that was her name, worked for his family. And he remembered how nice of a older lady she was at the time, and how good she was with them. And she was just a all around good person and great cleaner and worker. And so he was thinking about her. He was like, I wonder how she is these days. But then again, he was like, that was a while ago. So she's got to be in her 70s by now. So he was like, I don't even know if she's still alive. But I'm going to try to see if I can find her or whatever. And she was like, okay. So what ended up happening, he did, I think, was it his wife? Well, yes, his wife asked him what her name was, and he told her. And so she did some researching, and I think she ended up finding her, because she called around and did some research or whatnot, and she ended up finding her, or either he ended up finding her. I don't know. Either way, they both were searching, trying to search and find her. So he ended up finding her, and she actually was working for someone and had just stopped working for them. I think that person just let her go because they figured like she was too old or whatever. And so She kind of was like a free agent. And I know she had another job working at a supermarket, but yeah, she was still alive, surprisingly, and she was still ticking. She was still cleaning, still going about her life as if, she hasn't lost a step or beat. And so when he finally found her, of course, they call her and um right off the bat, she remembered who he was and his family, and she was like, "Wow, it's been so long. Like, how's your family or whatnot?" And um, I believe he's now. I think something happened to his parents, or was that no? I think his parents. Something happened to them. I think both Eugene and Rosemary parents. Rosemary lost her parents, I believe, to was it an accident or some sorts, or they just abandoned her? Yeah, Rosemary parents abandoned her. They abandoned her. And then I think with Eugene's parents, I think they just died from an accident, or maybe they were sick. But anyways, they don't really have their parents. But whatever, Ethel remember working for his family, and she remembered him because he was a little bit of a he was a little bad. Eugene was a little bit bad when he was younger. Not too bad, but the typical, nuisance like teenager that does just a little out of line, but not too out of line. But she will always get him in order or get him in check, so to speak. So she remembered him. She never forgot him or his family, and they were good people. And so they was calling to ask her, well, are you still available? Do you still clean? And she was like, of course I do. And they was wondering if she would be interested in coming to help um, Rosemary with her recovery because she was having surgery. And they asked her, would you be interested in coming by to, have an interview with us, and we could take it from there. And of course, she was mentioning something about pay, and they were willing to pay double than what she was making with the other lady or whatever she was doing. And so that perked her up. And so, of course, she was interested in that. So she agreed to come by and meet them or whatever. And so Eugene felt really good about this because he said, well, I'm glad it's somebody that I have history with, somebody who I'm kind of familiar with, and you'll love her. She's a very nice lady. She's down to earth, and she's just good at what she does. She's a tough cookie, but she gets the job done, and she's sweet. So you're gonna love her, and I feel comfortable with somebody like her taking care of you. And she was like, well, okay, we'll see. So Ethel, it's the day for Ethel to come by, and she comes by, and immediately when Rosemary saw her, she saw that this was a tiny woman, but she was full of energy and everything as such. And so she liked Ethel right off the bat. And so she comes in and explains to her what the job entailed and what all she would have to do. And of course, that's nothing to Ethel because she's used to cleaning and cooking and all of that stuff there. So that was a piece of cake, and it was not outside of the norm for her. So she was just excited and elated about doing that work, especially with someone that, well, with the family that she's familiar with, is given the work that she did in the past for Eugene. So she was more than delighted. And so yeah, and then Ethel took a liking to Rosemary, and of course Ethel was looking at how beautiful Rosemary house was and is, and how big it is. So she was just glad to work in an environment that looked like it looked. And of course, she was asking, they got better acquainted. She was asking Rosemary what she did for a living. Of course, Rosemary let her know that she ran a luxury nail spa place, and how Eugene went on to do good in his life because Ethel was telling Rosemary little fond memories that she had of him, and she didn't think that he was going to be able to be tamed, but he turned out to be a fine young gentleman. With him being an entertainment lawyer or whatever. So she was glad to know that Eugene turned out to be great. And so she was like, yeah, okay. So when does she start? Because she was ready to start as soon as possible, ASAP. And so Rosemary was like, yeah, well, you'll start next week or whatnot. And they just really took a liking to each other. It was a level of comfortability, even upon the first meeting. And I was happy that they got along and that it was just chemistry there. Because there's nothing worse than someone being your caretaker and you just have no chemistry and it's awkward and weird, and it's like I'm doing this job because I have to, not because I feel like a type of connection with you. It was just a connection, an immediate connection right off the bat. So I was happy for them. And so of course she leaves or whatnot, and later in the day, Eugene, of course, wanted to know how the meeting with Ethel went. And she said, oh, I just love her. Everything went great. She seems very eager to want to start or whatever. And I'm excited. And so it's time for Rosemary to have her surgery. She has her surgery. Everything is a success, no complications or problems. And everything went well. Like, she went home. Of course, she was in a little pain and she was a little groggy, and it was a little bit difficult to do little things. She couldn't do nothing actually when she got home. So she needed a lot of help in what Eugene could do. There was, on some days, Eugene always liked to make breakfast for her. So he would take care of that, and then take care of her, bathing her and stuff like that. But when Ethel came in, she kind of like took over. For her to be an older lady, like in her 70s, she got around pretty well for her age, and she had a lot of energy. She was very energetic or whatever. And so she shed all that down. She was like, well, that's what y'all are paying me for. Like, Eugene, I want you to just concentrate on your work, and I will take care of your wife around the clock. You don't have to worry about making her breakfast or doing nothing. I'll do it around the clock. And so she comes in and she does good around the house. She's an excellent cleaner. And also, Rosemary really loved Ethel's cooking and the way she cleaned, but she was like, wow, she was a little concerned with Ethel because of her age, even though she can get around pretty well. She kind of felt like, I don't want her doing too much because, of her age. So as time went on, of course, when you are taking care of someone, you start talking and you start sharing and being more intimate and personal with the things that you begin to talk about. And so Ethel was beginning to share and open up about how she has her great grandchildren that she takes care of. Now, she has three. One is named Anthony, and one is named Eddie, and then Cynthia. Now, Anthony and Eddie, they're 11 and 12, and then Cynthia is, I believe, 15 years old, maybe 14 or 15. So, you know, they're still young. And now the two boys, she don't really have any problems out of Eddie or Anthony. They're pretty good boys. Very nice. And you would think that boys would be more rowdy than girls, but no, Cynthia, she's a little problem child. Now, the reason why she has custody or parental rights to her grandchildren is because her daughter was strung out on drugs really bad, and they didn't really grow up in the best of neighborhoods. They lived in South Central LA, and you know how that is, or South Central Compton or something like that. So it's very bad neighborhood, and it's easier for you to either join a gang or get caught up in drugs and different things like that. And her daughter, got caught up in the wrong lifestyle, hang with the wrong people, and she died back behind that lifestyle with drugs and all that stuff there. And so, you know, even though they have other family members, Ethel was the only one that would really be able to take care of them because she lived in somewhat of a better part and end in California. She didn't live in the bad parts, but I mean, it wasn't stellar like Eugene and Rosemary where they live in the nice, expensive area, but it wasn't too bad. So it was better off for those three grandchildren to live with their grandmother. And so she is taking care of them. And with her being up in age, it's a little bit harder because she's not as young as she used to be. And when you begin to get up in that age in like your 70s, you are not as I know you're a little bit lenient because of your age, and you kind of let things go. And so Cynthia was a problem child. I think with Cynthia, the reason why she was having problems in school, she really didn't want to comply to the rules around her grandmother's house. She felt like she shouldn't have any rules. She should do what she wanted to do. And I think she was acting out because she really took it hard when her mother and her father both died back behind drugs and different things like that. Now, the boys, they took it hard, but not as hard as Cynthia. Cynthia didn't really deal with her issues really well, and she found her outlet was to act out. So that's what she did. And so she gave Ethel a little bit of problems. And so she was a bit worried about her, and she was hoping that she wasn't going to start hanging with the wrong crowd and making wrong decisions and choices because of her attitude problem, and so Rosemary would listen to this, and she would be a little bit concerned about Ethel, but Ethel was just trying to explain to her, oh, it's okay, she's just, I guess, a typical teenager or whatnot. And so she was like, cool. And then the problems that she was having with Cynthia, it started wearing it started wearing Ethel down. It started taking a toll on her body and just her overall. I mean, she's healthy now. I'm shocked that Ethel, with her being in her 70s, she don't take no medication. She's healthy as a whistle, like she's in good health, and that's amazing being in that age, and you don't have to take high blood pressure medications and all this and that. She's like clean bill of health. And so it was just taking a toll on her, like emotionally, like draining her because as each day that Rosemary was recovering, she was, of course, getting better and better. And so one particular day, she had woke up after, I believe, after about 2 or 3 hours after she had had lunch. And so when she woke up, she had called for Ethel, but she was not answering. And so she was worried. She was like, oh my gosh, where is she at? And so she could get up because she was getting stronger. She could get up and walk, but not do too much. But so she was calling for Ethel all around the house. And so she looked downstairs and she happened to see Ethel sleep on the couch. And she was like, oh my gosh, Ethel, are you okay? And of course, Ethel is the type of woman or lady that is very prideful. Like if she needs help, she really don't like to ask for help, but she will help someone in a heartbeat. So it's like, I don't know, she just don't want no one feeling like she is a burden or feeling like she's a charity case. Like she would much rather do things herself and get things done herself than to ask for help because she's too prideful for that. So she's one of them type people. So, of course, when Rosemary saw Ethel sleep on the job, of course, Ethel was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I was sleepy. I was tired a little bit. I dozed off longer than what I thought. I'm so sorry. Please don't be mad at me. I know I was sleeping on the job." And Rosemary didn't mind because she was considering this woman's age. So she didn't mind at all. She was like, "It's no problem. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to fire you. I'm not going to cut your pay or anything like that. You're good. And if you need a little bit more sleep, you can." And of course, Ethel, knowing her, she's a very strong-willed person too. She was like, "No, no, no, no. I'm not going to go to sleep. Like, what did you need? What do you need? Do you need me to get something for you?" And of course she was like, "Well, I was just going to tell you that my tray was upstairs." And so of course Ethel's like, "Yeah, you need to get back upstairs. Let's get you back upstairs and get you in bed, and I'll take care of everything else." And I think she asked her what she wanted for dinner, but she was right on it. And so that concerned Rosemary a little bit. And then considering the things that Ethel was confiding in her with the things that was going on with her grandbaby, Cynthia, she was just a little worried about her and thinking that maybe I hope she's not getting sick or anything like that. And so, of course, the deeper and closer that Ethel and Rosemary got, of course, she would share that with Eugene. And Eugene was like, "Well, from what I can remember about Ethel, she's totally fine. She's got it. She's a strong woman. And trust me, she's good. I know she's up there in age, but she's good. You don't have to worry about her." And of course, she was, Rosemary was telling her husband that, with the issues that she was having with her grandbaby Cynthia, and how she was just kind of like a trouble child, and just telling him different things as such. And so Eugene was like, "Don't worry." So anyways, as time progressed, more and more and more, she started noticing how Ethel's countenance had changed from the very first time that she came until up until this point. She just noticed how she looked more weighed down. She didn't look too good. She looked like she hadn't been getting any sleep. And so, of course, this worried uh, Rosemary a lot. And she wanted to know what was going on with her because, I mean, her countenance had changed, and the way that she was moving about, it wasn't that extra beat or pep in her step anymore. And so Ethel just broke down and just was telling her, "Well, it's just a lot of issues going on. I didn't get no sleep last night because Cynthia had ran off because she was mad because I told her to do something that she didn't want to do. So she would always go to her neighbor's place, her friend Sierra's place, and just hang out there whenever she would get mad." But Ethel didn't really know where she was. But then come to find out that's where she was. But still, you're running out here, you're not respecting your grandmother, you're just being bad. And so she wasn't really considering the age of her grandmother. Just it was just very inconsiderate. And so of course the grandmother stay up all night. She wasn't getting no sleep. And she was just worried about Cynthia. And then not only that, where they lived, somebody had bought out the building. So there was something going on with their building where they were going to have to move, and something with the pay at the other job she had to quit. It was just issues after issues after issues, and it was just taking a toll on Ethel. And how she don't got enough money for this and that, and she don't know how she's going to find another place, but she's determined to find some place else to live, because like I said, the owner, it got bought out for, I guess, another company to be built there. So eviction notices went out and different things like that. So they have to find some other places to live and search for. And so, of course, Rosemary is very much involved with that and trying to help any way that she could. And she was considering Ethel's age and those three grandchildren that she has to take care of and look after, and then one is acting a fool and cutting up. And so she's just thinking about all this, and she started getting this idea in her head, like, you know, now here this lady is, she's trying the best she can. She's done a good job with, raising these three kids, considering her age. One is only giving her a problem, but the other two are good. And she started thinking about how this was taking a toll on her, and she felt like maybe her and Eugene could take a little bit of that load off of Ethel. She started playing around with the idea in her mind that maybe she could start picking up some of that load, because Ethel would catch the bus, and Rosemary didn't know that Ethel was catching the bus. And so when she found that out, she offered to take her home and give her a ride anytime that she wanted to have a ride. And of course, Ethel, with being a prideful person she is, she couldn't let that happen until one day she really was tired. So she was letting her take her home or whatever. And considering where Rosemary lived when she would take her home, the area wasn't bad, but it wasn't as luxurious as where she lived. And she was like, she felt sorry that she was living in this apartment complex that really didn't look like much. And so she was considering her living conditions. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't like hers. Let me just say that. So she was thinking about that. And she was like, with her being older in age, she's not going to be around for these kids forever, even though she's in excellent condition and in excellent good health. Age, you can die of old age. And so she started flirting around with the idea that maybe this is a blessing in disguise. Maybe there's something more to this, because what a coincidence that the same woman that was a caretaker at Eugene's family's place when he was a kid, how she worked for them and cleaned for them, and how later in life, he is able to connect up with her again, and her being alive at her age, it just seemed very peculiar. And then they always wanted children. They, like I said, they went through so many adoption process with all types of different kids, and adopting so many kids and going through that and being hurt when they would become of age and just leave them, that I was surprised that they still desire to have kids. And so they were thinking, like, maybe we can adopt. Maybe we can, instead of her, Ethel, looking for a place for them, she was just thinking, like, it doesn't make no sense for her to try to look for a place, because even if she found a place, let's just say she found a place, how long does she have to stay there to take care of them kids? So it was like, why move somewhere else? So she was thinking in her mind, well, maybe they better pack. We're going to help them pack up, and she can live with us. And so she wanted to take that load off of Ethel. And so she presented that idea. She was like, I know that you said you got it and you're looking for places and things like that, but how about you guys just come, pack up your things, and live here with me? They had plenty of rooms as well. So each of the kids and even Ethel would have their own room and stuff like that. And of course, Ethel was like, what? You want us to live with you? And she was like, well, yeah. It's not a problem. We have plenty of space and room, and we love kids and different things like that. It wouldn't be a burden nor a problem. I'll really think about this. And so Ethel really didn't want to do that because she felt like she would be overstepping her boundaries, and it just, that's a lot to take in. Her being an elderly lady and then these three kids, she just couldn't bring herself to be okay with that. So she was glad to know that, Rosemary was offering that to her and that that was an option on the table, but she was pretty determined to try to find something of her own for her and her three grandchildren because she was making good money. They were paying her double than what she ever made with the other lady she was cleaning with or cleaning for, plus the other job that she had. So she was making pretty good money to find something else. But you know, the only thing Rosemary was concerned with was her age. And Ethel did realize too that, what, I am up in age. I mean, I'm in good health, but I don't know how much longer I actually have. She's in her 70s, so she too was thinking about that in the back of her mind. And she always wanted her grandbabies to be somewhere nice with a good family because she thought that eventually she was on her own thinking about her being up in age and wondering how the kids were going to be if something were to happen to her. Like she was wondering if they were going to be well off in a nice family. She thought that she was going to put them up for adoption possibly one day. Now she does have relatives and stuff like that, but they are barely getting by on their own. Like they have kids on their own, and they really didn't have money like that. She don't come from money. And the neighborhoods that they live in are just horrible. It would be horrible for the kids. So even though she has family members who could do it, she didn't want them being around that type of environment. So at this point, she is considering that, and she's starting to think herself that maybe this is like a setup or a blessing or whatever. And so she said, "Well, I'll consider it, and thanks for putting this on the table as an option." And so, of course, now Rosemary just from her heart, she was telling Ethel that you and your boys can move in, and she hadn't talked to her husband Eugene about this. And so after she told Ethel that she could move in or whatnot, she shares this with Eugene, and she was just explaining to Eugene the situation. And Eugene was like, "You told her what?" And she was like, "Yeah, I mean, it's not like she's a complete stranger. You have history with her, and don't you love her like I love her and consider her family?" And he was like, "Well, yeah." And she was like, "Don't we love kids?" And he was like, "Yeah, but that's a major responsibility, having her and her kids and all of that." And she was like, it's nothing different than what we've always done. We brought in several kids that never wanted to stay. They would always leave us when they get up in age. So it's not anything that different. And besides, I've grown very, very fond of Ethel, you know, and all of that. And so he was like, "Well, I mean, next time if you make any decisions or tell Ethel it'll be okay to do this and that, just run it by me first." And she was like, "Okay." And so I think on one particular day, at this point, she's pretty much back to health. And at this point, Ethel really don't need to work for them no more. But she cared so much about Ethel that she decided to keep her on even well after her recovery and still pay her so that she wouldn't have to worry about work because she was still out of a second job. And so she was like, you don't even have to clean for me anymore if you want to stay and continuously, work with me. I'll still keep you and still pay you, so you don't ever have to worry about that or whatever. And of course, so Ethel is really appreciative of this, and so I believe she invites her over to have dinner one night when she was going to take her home. And of course, she knew that she was going to be there a little late. So she told Eugene that she was going to stop by her house to have dinner with them or whatever, or just drop her off at home or something like that. I don't think she expected to stay. I think she was taking Ethel home, and Ethel needed her to come in for something. And so when Rosemary went into Ethel's place, she met the boys, and Cynthia happened to be there. And so immediately when Anthony and Eddie met her, of course, they knew about her because whenever Ethel would go home, she would explain how she loved working for Rosemary and how Rosemary and Eugene would treat her so well. And of course, she had history with them and she looked forward to cleaning for Rosemary. So they know a lot about her because she talks about Rosemary and how her house is so beautiful and how she have a pool and they live in a luxurious neighborhood and area, and how she does nails and all of that. And Cynthia really loved that because Cynthia loved getting her nails done. So she perked right up whenever she would hear stories about that. And so when she came by and she had dinner with them, the kids really took a liking to her. They really, really liked her a lot and very appreciative that they treated their grandmother, that Rosemary and Eugene treated their grandmother very, very nice. And so they was very fond of her and they really liked her. And immediately Rosemary fell in love with them. Like they were just so adorable. The two boys, Anthony and Eddie, were so respectful. And Cynthia was too. She was, I wouldn't say she was as friendly as Eddie and Anthony. She was just a little bit guarded and just a typical teenager. Didn't really, I mean, she wasn't totally rude and didn't have like no manners. She had some manners, but she could have done a little bit better. But she started perking up when, Rosemary was trying to get her to warm up to her. She was like, "Well, I do nails and your nails are really pretty because Cynthia has some pretty designs on her nails, and of course, with her being a owner of a nail salon, she really liked Cynthia's design, and she was like, "Well, anytime that you want your nails done, I'll be glad to do your nails." And of course, that perked Cynthia up, and she was like, "For real?" And she was like, "Yeah, anytime you want." And so that made her open up a lot, and so Cynthia was kind of nice and taking a liking to her or whatever. So she was having such a good time with having dinner with them that she had lost track of time. And of course, she had to excuse herself and say, "Well, it's getting late. I stayed here longer than what I thought. Dinner was bomb.com, of course." And so, of course, immediately when she was on her way home, she saw all the missed calls and the texts and all of that from her husband, and not only her husband, but Ming Ji and Janelle, her co-workers or her workers, were concerned about her. And oh yeah, also when I love her two workers there at the nail salon because they really stepped up to the plate when they knew that Rosemary was going to have surgery. They're very, very not only good workers but good friends and kind of like family to her. So I like how they called and checked on Rosemary and was always concerned about her. So I really like Ming Ji and Janelle, her workers. They're really great. So they were all calling, blowing up her phone to make sure she was okay. And of course, she called the Ming Ji and Janelle back to let them know that she was okay. She just stayed longer than what was expected when she took Ethel home. So, and then as far as her husband, she should have called her husband immediately back, but she was like, "Well, since I'm getting ready to go home, I'll just see him when I get home." So, of course, when she got in there, Eugene was very pissed off. He was mad because he didn't know where she was at. I mean, he knew that she was going to drop Ethel off, but he didn't know that she was going to actually stay. And she was like, "Yeah, I mean, I dropped her off. I'm sorry I turned my phone off and I stayed longer than expected." And she said, "And I met her grandchildren." And of course, when he knew that she was okay, he was just mad that he was like, "Next time, can you just communicate with me that, you know, hey, I did drop Ethel off. I'm having dinner with them. He just wanted her to communicate her whereabouts because he didn't know where she was at after, with her having surgery and all of that. He just was more concerned and worried about her than normal, which is understandable. So she was like, okay, I will next time. And then he perked up and wanted to know how the experience was when she met the kids. And he could see in her eyes that they made such an impression on her because she was like, I really love them. They are so beautiful. And of course, he was like, yeah, she has two grandsons and then one granddaughter. And she's like, Cynthia is a bit of a just a wild child, just kind of like, typical teenager. I don't think she's a bad girl. She just needs some guidance. And so she was like, well, maybe Cynthia just needs some therapy sessions or whatnot. But I think she's okay. She'll be okay. And so, of course, with him hearing that, he kind of perked up or whatever. And she was like, I think that we should go because for Thanksgiving, because this is around the holidays, I think after she had dinner over there, Ethel had suggested that they come over for Thanksgiving, which they didn't have any plans for Thanksgiving. And so she was like, I hope you won't be mad, but I told her that we will have dinner again with her because she invited us to Thanksgiving dinner, and that way you can get to meet the kids as well. I mean, he was a little mad, but not too mad because, I mean, what man don't like food? And so he was like, well, that's okay. That's okay. And so comes time for them both to come over to have dinner for Thanksgiving. And immediately when they come in, Eugene loved the boys because the boys were very receptive of him and they were saying how, oh, we want to meet some of the celebrities that you work for and all of that. Can you promise us to get us tickets and different things like that? And how they want to come by the house and swim in the pool. And they got to talking about fishing. And they said, oh gosh, we love fishing or whatever, because I think their parents, at one point in time, they used to go fishing or something like that. And those two boys love going fishing. And Eugene, that's what he loves to do every weekend. But since his wife had the surgery, he had to cut back on doing that. And so the person he normally would go with, he didn't hang out with him as much because she had the surgery. So now he was needing someone to go out with him to go fishing, and he could never find a partner, and he didn't like going by himself. So when those two boys perked up and said that they love going fishing, he just without thought said, well, if your grandmother agrees, would you guys like to go fishing with me next weekend or whatever? And of course, Ethel she knows them. They're not strangers. So she said, yeah, if y'all boys want to go and you're willing to take them, sure. And so the boys, they were just, they loved him. They just took a liking to him. And I think Cynthia, she liked him too. But I guess she was in a bad mood because she wanted to do something that she couldn't do, but she was cordial or whatnot. But you know, Eugene liked all of them. He loved all of them. And so he was surprised by what he said. What he said, well, since you guys invited us over for Thanksgiving, why don't y'all come over for Christmas dinner? How about that? And so, yeah, I don't know, they just took a liking to each other. And of course, Ethel, when she's seeing this, how they're interacting with each other, the kids, how they're taking a liking to Rosemary and Eugene. She's just happy. She's just happy that, everybody loves everybody and everybody's getting along. And so things are escalating with Ethel's situation with the house, and the dates actually got bumped up, and they were needing to move out and vacate the premises a lot sooner than what she expected. So she didn't have much time. And so the offer that Rosemary put on the table for Ethel to accept if she wanted to, she started thinking more and more and more about that. And so, of course, Eugene at this point, they talk about it some more, and Rosemary explained that, the situation with where Ethel live is escalating because they moved the date up and they have to move a lot sooner. So, honey, we really need to go ahead and just let them come in. There's plenty of room. And of course, at this point, Eugene doesn't care because he really loves the kids and they've been interacting with each other and hanging out with each other. And so it's just perfect. Of course, Ethel gives in and said, you know what, is that offer still up for us to move in with you? I promise we won't be no trouble and we won't stay that long. And I can put all my stuff in storage so I won't have to take it there because I won't need nothing there because you have a bed and everything like that. So I could just put my stuff in storage or whatever. Is that still on the table? And she was like, yeah, of course. If you still want to come and move, we'll have, the movers come by and pack up the stuff for you guys and you won't have to worry about anything. She said, well, okay, well, I'm going to tell the kids about it and let's do it. So anyway, she tells them. And of course, the only person who had a problem with it is Cynthia. Cynthia did not want to leave her neighborhood. She didn't want to leave the school or leave behind her friends. So she did not move with them. Like she wanted to stay with her friend at her friend Sierra's parents' place. And so she was not going with them. And that kind of broke Ethel's heart because it's like, we're all moving to some place else and I just don't feel good about you staying here. But she didn't want to get the police involved because she felt like if the police get involved, then they're just going to take her baby and put her in the foster care system. So she didn't want to call the law and report her as a missing child. So she kind of like let her have her way or whatnot. And so, of course, when Rosemary and Eugene found out that Cynthia wouldn't be joining them, of course they were heartbroken, but they was like, well, eventually she will come around. She will. And of course, Ethel was really sad by this because she want all her grandbabies to be under one roof. So, of course, the boys are elated. They're happy, excited. They have a new place to live and a beautiful place at that. They have a pool and just a better neighborhood and just a better life. So they're happy about it. But Cynthia's kind of like, that girl, she's just a troubled teen. Like I said, she really didn't take it too well when her parents died back behind drugs and stuff. She didn't really deal with it. So she's just acting out. And so of course, they're still paying Ethel. Even though Ethel is not doing a lot, they're still giving her money and letting her stay there at their place for free. And she's really grateful and feeling like this is such a blessing. And she's feeling like now she's starting to get back to her perky, upbeat self because she's not dealing with a lot of stress. She's having extra pep in her step again and she's not feeling stressed out or worried about her children and different things like that because she know that they're in a better place and environment. And so the only thing that she's a little sad about is Cynthia. And so to make a long story short, which has already been long, Cynthia, she, after staying with her friend at her friend's parents' place, she realized that it was the same situation at her friend's parents' place. They still had rules. They still were being told what to do, and they still had to abide by certain guidelines. And she was like, well, dang, it's the same thing here as well. Like, I can't do what I want to do. And she realized that, this must be a normal thing. She thought that only her grandmother Ethel was very strict, but yeah, that's pretty much, you have rules that you have to abide by when you're living up under someone's roof. And so she wasn't too happy, but she still wasn't ready to live with someone else. And so one particular day, as they were moving, I think some items or whatever, Cynthia had snuck by, and um she didn't want to she didn't want her brothers or her grandmother to know that she was there. But anyways, Rosemary had a chance to talk to her, and she was just talking to her, and she was like, Cynthia was like, I of course, they told me that they're moving in with you guys, and I want to thank you and Mr. Eugene for taking them in and being really good people and looking out for them or whatever. And that's really, really nice. And she was like, yeah, there are good people left in the world. And she was like, well, that's kind of hard to believe, but I am grateful that they did find nice people. And of course, Rosemary was telling her, well, you're more than welcome to stay with us if you want to. And she was like, I'm just not ready right now. And so Rosemary did kind of like this analogy thing that where she was trying to get um Cynthia to see that, it's all about what you do with your life and how you do it. She made a demonstration with this cup of water. And she did this demonstration where she would put water in the cup and then throw it in the sink. And Cynthia was like, what? I mean, I don't understand what you're doing. And she was trying to explain to her or get her to see that a cup is a cup, and water in the cup it could either be destructive or it can be conducive, and it could be counterproductive or productive. It's all on you, how you want to see life and what you want to do with your life. And she was just making different demonstrations, and that really got through to Cynthia to see that, she needs to think about the choices that she's making, you know, how it could affect her, and anything can go wrong at any given moment. You may think you're doing something right, but it could really go left real quick. And so that really got to her, and she never forgot that. And so she kind of snuck out without seeing her brothers or her grandmother. And so they're fully moved in with Eugene and Rosemary. And of course, the love there begins to grow and grow and grow and grow until eventually Rosemary was like, I'm thinking about your age and different things like that. I know you're healthy and I know you're well and there's nothing wrong with you. But I'm thinking about those kids and how, let's just say something happened to you, they'll probably be put in the foster care system. And so basically, I want to know, do we have your blessings? We'd like to adopt your children, all three of them. And she was like, what? It's one thing that y'all being nice to me and letting us live here, but you want to actually adopt them? And she was just so overwhelmed with joy, because that's the main thing she was worried about, is how would they be taken care of if anything was to happen to her. She was happy that it was with a good family, someone trustworthy, someone that's very good hearted and good in nature, and that they were going to be in good hands. And so when she discovered that this is where they both were at, that they wanted to adopt the children as their own and take legal guardianship over the children, she felt at peace, and she was on board with that. And she was just grateful to God and so appreciative that these people were being this nice to her and her grandchildren. And so she was like, yeah, you guys have my blessing. I would love that, because I always wondered how they would be and who they would stay with, and if they were going to be in a loving family. So if you want to do that, sure. Of course, she talked it over with Eugene. And even though Cynthia wasn't there for that whole process and all of that, they put her down as they put all of them down that they would want to be legal guardianship, have legal guardianship over all three of them. And they start that process or whatever. And even though Ethel is happy that they have a home and all of that, she would call Cynthia every chance she could. And Cynthia was kind of avoiding her. And whenever she would call over to Cynthia's friend's house, Sierra's house, they would say, "Oh, you just missed her. She went out." And she was just avoiding her grandmother's call. And I was thinking in the back of my mind, like, oh no, I hope that she mends her relationship with her grandmother. What if something happens to her grandmother? She hadn't talked to her grandmother. I was so worried about that. And so, that was the only missing piece for the grandmother. But Cynthia came around because one particular evening when I believe Rosemary tried to call to speak with Cynthia, and come to find out, her friend said, "Oh, she moved out like last night." And they didn't know where she went or none of that. And when Rosemary heard that, she didn't want to tell Ethel that. And so she tried to avoid it, which she did avoid it until Ethel called. And Ethel was in a very good mood because it was the holidays and all of that good stuff there. And they were preparing for Christmas. It was Christmas Eve, actually. And so she wanted to talk to Cynthia. So she called over to the place where Cynthia was. And Cynthia friend, answered the phone. And she was like, "Well, Cynthia, she don't live here. She left last night or whatever, yesterday." And that broke Ethel's heart because here it is, Christmas Eve. I hadn't talked to my grandbaby. I don't know where she went or what she's doing. And she moved somewhere else without telling me. So she's sad at this point. And so tears are in her eyes. And of course, Rosemary tried to lighten the mood or whatever and tried to get her in better spirits. But, she tries to be happy or whatever. And Rosemary actually, I think Ethel wanted a Gucci purse that she always wanted. So she knew that tomorrow Ethel was going to perk up because she got her the exact Gucci purse that she wanted. So, anyways, she wasn't about to give it to her on Christmas Eve. She was like, well, she'll feel better tomorrow. And so when Christmas comes, they wake up, they opening up their gifts, and of course, the boys are happy. They got iPhones and computers and just clothes and every gift that a little 11 and 12-year-old kid would love. So they had a very great Christmas. And then Cynthia had a whole lot of presents that they got her up under the tree. And then, of course, they got Ethel the Gucci purse she always wanted. And that really made her happy. And she was so excited and willing and just jumping for joy. But in the back of her mind, she was thinking about Cynthia. And so it's time for dinner, and they kept getting knocks on the door, and it was basically her neighbors because every year around Christmas they do little gifts exchanges. And so they were coming by to exchange the gifts and say Merry Christmas and all this and that. And they were about to have dinner, but every time they would have to have dinner or about to have dinner or say their prayers for Christmas dinner, there will be a knock on the door. So this time, because Eugene would always get the door. And so this time, when it was a knock at the door, Rosemary decided to say, I got it. Just sit down. You've been running back and forth. Let me just go to the door. And at the door, it was Cynthia. And she was so happy to see Cynthia. And Cynthia had this sad look on her face. And she looked out and she saw that it was a cab out there. And so Rosemary said, how are you doing? What's going on? She said, I'm doing good. And Rosemary said, I heard you moved out. And she said, yeah, I moved out. I went to the bus station and spent the night there. And Rosemary was like, why did you spend the night at the bus station? She was like, I don't know. I just did. I didn't have nowhere to go or whatever. She said, you know, you could have called us and you do have somewhere to go. You can stay with us. And she was like, yeah. And she was like, yeah, of course. You know, your grandmother has been worried sick about you and we have as well. And she was like, yeah, I just didn't think that, you know, you guys would want someone like me. And Rosemary was heartbroken. She was like, I don't know what made you think that, but you're more than welcome to stay here. And she was like, well, I heard about how y'all adopted, you know, the boys and everything and like that. And she said, well, did you put me on there? And she was like, yeah, we included you too. And she was like, well, is it still on the table for me to live here? She was like, don't be silly, of course. And so she said, yeah, I would like to live here now. I've learned and I really would like to be near family. She said, that's no problem. Your grandmother would love to see you. So she went out there to pay for the cab fare and get all of she only had like a bag and I think a suitcase, and she got that from the cab. And of course, when Cynthia came in, the grandmother just lost it. She cried and she was just so overwhelmed with joy and so happy that Cynthia had finally come to live with them. Now it felt like a very, very, very special holiday because all family was together and it was on Christmas Day. And I was so happy when Cynthia came through that door and she sat down and everybody was filled with tears. And they said, well, you have presents up under the gift waiting for you. I guess, you know, you can open it up after we eat. And so they're just sitting around there saying what they're grateful for. And of course, Ethel is grateful for, you know, just them taking them in and having a better situation for her grandchildren. And the kids were grateful for their gifts and different things like that. And then of course Eugene and Rosemary said that they were the greatest gift that they got and received this year, the gift of family, just having them. And it was just so beautiful how they were just sitting around there. And you know, even though Ethel was old, she ended up living. I thought she was gonna die the next day, but Ethel lasted 6 more months after they spent all that time. So they were able to spend a little bit more time with her. And then she ended up, because of her old age, having a massive heart attack. But she died happy. She said, I don't want, you know, she would always have little talks with Rosemary and say, like, you know, if I when I die, I don't want nothing sad. I want it to feel like a celebration. I don't want nothing sad or all of that. I don't want nobody to mourn. I want people to be happy because I've lived an excellent life. I've met some excellent people. I had wonderful grandbabies that I devoted my time to, and then my grandbabies are in good hands. So I'm gonna die happy. And so, yeah, when they had her funeral, you know, it was just a celebration. And they felt good that she didn't die because of no sicknesses or anything like that. It just was a massive heart attack. And she died happy. And they had to give to family. It was such a touching story. And I'm glad that even though, you know, Rosemary had to have the hysterectomy, they ended up having three wonderful kids that turned out excellent. Actually, Cynthia did a 360-degree turnaround. What they did when Cynthia lived with them, they got her some therapy sessions. I think after 6 sessions, she did a turnaround. She made lots of new friends at her new school, in her new neighborhood. The boys had soccer practice, basketball practice. They just were all doing well, especially Cynthia. I was glad that she turned around her life for the better. And she turned out to be one of the well-behaved kids you have ever seen. Because I mean, to go from being kind of like a troubled child to becoming this respectful young lady with manners, it was just so nice to see the development of her character. And Eugene and Rosemary finally having kids that won't ever turn their back or be concerned about who they are, where they come from. They won't be concerned about their biological parents because, their grandmother was their parent. So, and then it just warmed their hearts when they would call them mommy and daddy. And they just knew that this was a good fit. So I'm glad that, in a sense, all those other kids that they adopted, how that didn't work out because God had something else in mind. Children who will never leave them or abandon them when, feelings and stuff got involved, that they were very, very, very close. And no matter if they did go off to college and get grown, that was for life, the bond that they had. So, yes, this is the end of this book, The Gift of Family. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. To the next book review, you guys be easy and be blessed. Ciao.